entirety of that process. I asked you guys to think about things that you were motivated for 6 week to 6 month. We're going to have you guys share those later on years, but think about that and think about your motivation for each one of those. Now, when we look at need-based theory, we can look at motivational needs that represent 3 basic needs, the acquired or 3 needs theory. McKellen came up with it. Pintrick has evolved it since then. For those familiar with citations, this is really an APA formatting-based need theory: achievement, power, and affiliation. And so the whole goal of this, the whole basis, is that the needs that we have that drive us, that energize, motivate, and sustain our behavior, are acquired across our lifetime. So in essence, an individual's specific needs are acquired over time and shaped by your individual life experiences. That an individual's specific needs are acquired over time and shaped by your individual experiences. So let me ask you this. How many of you are competitive? Competitive. Hate losing. Want to be the best. Want to dominate your 7-year-old in Candyland every single time you play. I'm the type of dad who will not intentionally lose to my kids. I refuse to throw a game. Now, I know that I had a grandmother who lost every single game. In fact, she would play cards, and she would throw away cards she knew she needed for gin rummy and that type of thing. I just get too competitive. I crush my kids at Super Smash Brothers and all those type things. So it's one of those things. Now, why am I like that? Well, I was the oldest of 3 brothers. We were close together in age. We were very competitive. That's what these needs-based theory says, that our needs that we bring into any environment, learning environment or otherwise, are shaped across the lifetime, acquired over time, and shaped and influenced by our individual life experiences. And we can categorize and define them based off these 3 labels: achievement, power, and affiliation. Now, I'm going to give you kind of what these needs look like. Here's the official definition. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to put them into a learning context. So we're going to take all these 3 kind of overarching needs, and we're going to say, here's these needs that are cultivated across time. These global needs that we all have levels of. Some of us are driven by achievement, some of us are driven by power, some of us are driven by affiliation. We have different levels of those based off our experiences. But then we're going to put these and contextualize them into a learning environment, which is the goal of this course. So achievement, what does that mean? You have a strong need to set and accomplish goals. A strong need to set and accomplish goals. In fact, in setting or accomplishing these goals, you have an innate and intrinsic desire for mastering of skills. You set high standards. You expect significant accomplishments. So it's an individual's desire for significant achievement measured by accomplishments, skill mastery, and high standards. High standards revolving around setting a goal, you can see a trophy right there. There is no distinction necessary between achievement goals that are intrinsic in nature versus extrinsic in nature. They both pertain. Okay, getting first place, winning a contest could be an achievement-based goal. Okay, feeling successful that you've mastered a skill that you couldn't do before could be an achievement-based goal. So those are both intrinsic and extrinsic examples, but achievement has everything to do with that aspect. Then we get to power. Power talks about our desire to maintain influence over others and our environment. Those are important because they both relate to these aspects or indices of power. Desire to maintain control over others and our environment. My competition-based people. This is where you're going to check in. It's not so much that you want this award, you want to beat somebody. When you look at the personal-based aspects, this has everything to do with direct comparison with others, competition, winning, status, recognition. You want to be the one who is leading an organization, having influence. With regards to institutional control, these are being put in positions where you have decision-making power and ability. Institutional has everything to do with the environment you find yourself in. Where are you on this hierarchy? Institutional power means being an influencer, a decision maker, someone that people have to listen to. Can you control the actions of other individuals? And then finally, affiliation. This is the social arena. These have aspect, people driven by this want to belong or be accepted to a group. Has a high degree of sociability component, meaning that people with affiliation needs want to be liked, and they will respond to the feedback of others. Responding to the feedback of others means that they might change their behavior. They have a need to be accepted. In fact, sometimes we've talked about in this class this semester, N2B, need to belong. They actually value collaboration over competition. People pleasers. Want to make sure everyone is happy. Now, one of those defines you. One of those is your dominant drive. We can bring aspects of these into any situation, regardless of it's an intramural game or an academic class or a piano recital or whatever it is. We bring elements of all three of these, but this theory holds that as a whole, we have a dominant drive, one that really characterizes the way that we approach tasks and are motivated. Are we motivated by achievement, accomplishments? Are we motivated by aspect of control, being able to influence others, being able to have people do what we want them to do? Or are we more motivated about being accepted, liked, and part of a group? If you're doing group projects, you could certainly see what people bring, and you maybe even can see some of those aspects that play themselves out over the course of the semester. So those are the three basic needs. I'm not saying these are right or wrong. I'm saying this is a view. You can agree with this theory and say, well, I don't really see that these needs really define me. I have a different need. Or you might see that why isn't there 4 instead of 3, or why isn't there 2? But again, it's a viewpoint of needs, updated by Fincher. Now, what we have done is educational psychologists have taken these 3 basic needs, APA approach, achievement, power, and affiliation, and they've used them to understand motivational needs in a learning environment. For those who are studying aspects of self-determination with some of the colleagues I have here at the university, you might be familiar with Deci and Ryan's work. Looking at aspects of persistence, looking at aspects of many different engagement-based tasks that will influence someone in a learning environment. So when we describe and depict these, we can kind of look at the aspects of how each one of these relates. Now, the first one, competence. When we look at the need for competence, we are talking about the ability for us to be successful at something, to demonstrate a skill set, mastery, or achieve a goal. Now, how competent we feel is part of some factors that we're going to preview here. Let me just do it now. Well, I'll go back. I'll just find these and then we'll kind of walk through these one by one. So competence is Oh, hang on.
Our three basic needs are autonomy.
First. Okay, so we have a video, but we'll get to that here in a second. So then autonomy. Autonomy has everything to do with what we talked about in our lecture on Monday. Independence, right? When we looked at those things that can maximize intrinsic motivation, that we are self-determined. In essence, we are choosing what we are engaging in. One of the things I've heard with gifted and what I've seen and actually experienced myself, gifted and talented students are more motivated to complete a project when they get to choose the topic, choose the format in which it's presented. It's not conveyed to them. A book is not assigned to them. Rather, they get to choose. This choice, this autonomy, control over that aspect is imperative to increasing motivation within a learning environment. And then the last aspect here, relatedness and belongingness. Critical. Do people care how I do? Are people invested in my success? We looked at relatedness as it pertained to social motivation last time. We talked about elements of conformity, how you have normative and informational conformity. But this relatedness, our connectedness to one of the things your books calls communities of practice. Okay, organizations in which you're a valued member. School institutions in which you are part of this group. Your affiliations with these community of practices. If you know someone's going to be excited to hear about the fact that you got a good, you ever call home and say, guess what? I got something on my test. And if that's met with indifference, your motivation to do well on that class plummets. Doesn't seem like anyone values that achievement. This is that affiliation based. Does someone care about how I'm doing in this class? Am I just a UIN? Am I just a number? Or am I an individual? Certainly, a lot of you can recognize that experience when you've taken these large, mega, 300-something classes in which really all you are is a seat and a UIN, and it's a very impersonal educational experience. So let's look at the video. So if you didn't capture that with notes, if you're more a visual learner, which I will be excited to read, that'll be done by Monday, all of your reacts, then you might appreciate the way that this is conveyed. Self-determination theory.
Our three basic needs are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. We've heard some things about them today, but I'm just going to briefly say what they are. For us, relatedness is feeling cared for and connected to others. It has to do with a sense of belonging, a feeling that you matter to the other people that are there. And relatedness is enhanced not just by people treating you warmly and including you, but it's also enhanced by your giving to them and you're being able to matter in their lives. That's part of what helps us feel connected. So it's not a one-way street in relatedness. It has to do with both. And again, we'll show evidence to that effect. Competence is really commonly studied in psychology. Most theories of psychology would probably agree with us on this one point, which is competence is essential to wellness, to feel effective in your environment, to have some sense of mastery of the things that are important to you. Very, very important, and environments can have a big impact on that experience. And then finally, relatedness, finally autonomy, which has been probably the most controversial, but also the most central of our psychological needs in the sense of research and our integrative mission, so to speak. Autonomy refers to behavior that is self-endorsed, that you agree with and find congruent within yourself. And so autonomy here means that you feel choiceful, self-initiating, and when you're fully autonomous, you're wholeheartedly behind the thing that you're doing. And again, because that wholeheartedness, that's why performance tends to be better when you're acting out of autonomous motives.
Colorful view. I like kind of that whiteboard-based aspect. Now, I pulled that from summer camps. There's a lot of evidence that summer camps inspires all of that. So here's self-determination theory. Maximize intrinsic motivation through competence, autonomy, and relatedness. We won't do this, but I wanted to kind of talk about cognitive evaluation theory. So as we skip through that last slide, if you want to go back and watch the video, it's a really interesting case study. I don't have time for it today. When I taught, or this student taught in the summer, we had 2 hours. Today, we only have 1 hour and 15 minutes. So there's certain things I'm going to have to cut from this presentation. But the video that they had before, if you have a chance to go back and watch it, is really, really good. But when you look at aspects of informing our motivation in a learning environment, cognitive evaluation theory relate to two aspects. It relates to autonomy and it relates to aspects of this competence. Cognitive evaluation theory is how we gauge feedback and the importance of feedback in sustaining and directing motivation. Cognitive evaluation theory explains the effects of feedback on motivation. It focuses in on the competence and autonomy aspects. And so it looks at how consequences framed by feedback that we get, will impact our view of competence and help influence whether we feel that we have what they just described, aspects of self-control. There's three types, and I guarantee all of you this semester have gotten all three types. Informational. What informational feedback does, first of all, it communicates your standing or understanding of the skill or learning activity. The other thing it does is it places credit on the individual. The location of the feedback is on the individual. Internally perceived locus of causality. What that means is, remember, we talked about locus of causality last time, right? We have intrinsic on one side, extrinsic on the other. It's our reason for acting. It's this balance, this shift, and where the majority of that lies. So if we get informational feedback, what it does is it looks at one's level of skill, mastery of the content, speaks to the competence, while placing the source of that on the individual themselves. One of the things that I really do try to do is when I give feedback on assignments or on papers, I try to provide informational feedback. Well done. You accomplished. And look at the words that says. You. And this was an effective, and you talk about those things, the strengths, how you obtained that mastery. When you read that, you feel empowered. It increases intrinsic motivation. The feedback that you get really kind of aligns it to skills and strengths, gives you areas for improvement, but it generates your general level of competence on a given task. You did a good job of doing this. There was excellent identification of. All the feedback is based on who? You. Now, controlling. Same type of feedback that you get. Same assignment. Look at the difference. External perceived locus of causality. It negatively influences intrinsic motivation. And you can look at it increases extrinsic competence. Let's talk about what this looks like. Have you ever been excited to call home with a grade you got on an assignment? Maybe your parents know what you've got coming up, and all of a sudden you do really, really well on a test. And the feedback that you get is, I'm so glad you listened to me. I told you that if you did this, you would do well. And I'm really glad you put my suggestions into place. Where does that place the information? Not on the individual. It places it on who? Someone else. Doesn't that just deflate you? You're excited that you did well. You did well. But then the feedback you get is, this rubric really helped you. It's obvious that it takes all credit away from you and it places it on an external object, entity, or individual. And for people, that's frustrating. Not only in a learning environment, in a work environment, in which you don't get credit for ideas. It's given to a team. It's given to a supervisor that puts yours into place. And all of a sudden, the feedback that you get is controlling. Way to be a team player. Excellent demonstration. And like, but wait, no, that's me. And what does it do? It puts the prize on being recognized. And it decreases intrinsic motivation. And so when we strive for this balance, and if you're going to go into education, one of the best things you can do is you can place student successes squarely on their shoulders. Help them own up to mistakes that they did, but don't give yourself credit for work you didn't do. You can provide a framework. The students are the ones who fill in those blanks for successes. So help people identify things they do well to build up what? Self-determination, motivation, efficacy. Think about the messages you send. And if you are controlling, whether you think you're helping or not, what you're actually doing is hurting. Because all you're sending is controlling type messages. And that controlling aspect we see will turn people off who have this desire for self-determination. And we've seen that optimal experiences and this feedback can be used to maximize motivation. But what a lot of people do is completely turn that off. Last, amotivating. I love this graphic. You ever gotten feedback like that? It's not even constructive, it's just critical. Why'd you bother submitting this? This is horrible. There's no onus of where you put things well. There's no aspects of things you can improve on. It just stops you dead in your tracks. What it does is it facilitates perceptions of incompetence, and it undermines intrinsic motivation. Here with controlling, it takes the emphasis from intrinsic and moves it to extrinsic, being recognized and rewarded. Amotivating feedback kills motivation. It is the highest and criticalest motivation or destruction of one's sense of competence. It's also interesting how people can respond to this amotivating statement. Some people use it as a great source of resiliency and can, you look at the success stories of you'll never be successful, you'll never walk across that type of thing, and they use that as that's not common. More often than not, this will stop someone dead in their tracks. So that's informational, controlling, and amotivating behavior. I'd be willing to bet that across this semester, you've had experiences in each one of those. Each one of those. Not being accepted to a student organization, not doing well on an assignment, or doing well on an assignment and having credit given to others or to other aspects independent of your work. And it's frustrating, and it kills your motivation across the semester. We're sitting here in November, and you certainly can look at classes that you might be more motivated to work hard for and achieve than those that you are just really going to do with the bare minimum to get by. It matters. Here's effective feedback animation. How long is this? I think. Let's see. Oh yeah, we have time. Well, apparently not. We'll skip it. Let's go on. Setting goals. All right. Now, here's where I want to hear about your goals. I'm going to stop the share for a second. Now, does anybody in the Zoom room have a short-term goal that you can accomplish before the end of the semester? Goal that they want to share? If so, you can type it in there. You can unmute yourself. I'm curious. Any goals that we have? Short-term goals. 6 weeks or less that you want to accomplish. No sugar. Oh, yikes. I would lose in about 2 hours. All right. Survive. Nice. All A's this semester. There we go. Find a job. That's interesting as well. Certainly a difficult market. Reduce to 4 alcoholic beverages a month. Christmas present for mom. Okay. These can all work. Here in the group here, anything that we have, short-term goals. 6 weeks or less. I'll tell you mine. I want to win my fantasy football league. I'm sitting at 5-4 right now. I started off 1-4, have made some trades, have built up a team, have a big showdown with Team Smalls this week. Team Smalls beat us week 1, but we are ready to go. I mean, there's things that, and I'm motivated for that with regards to, now, that's a goal setting I have. There's other things as well. Anybody here in person? Short-term goals. We've got examples from the Zoom room. What about y'all? Short-term goals. Things you want to accomplish in 6 weeks or less. Make a basket? Oh, here, like with the... Well, I'll bring it next time. Okay, so I'll bring the basketball hoop next time. Katie actually wants to shoot and make a basket. Okay, that'll work. Other things. An A on the last test. I love it. All right. That's coming up here in, 10 days. It seems like it's going to be on the 23rd. So an A on the last test. All those things. Now, when you look at those goals, a goal is something that has two things. It has a beginning state, and it has an ideal state. A beginning state and an ideal state. What a goal communicates is two things. It communicates, number one, where you currently are. And then it communicates where you would like to be. A beginning state and an ideal state. You can look at level of preparation versus demonstration of knowledge across a test. You can look at amount of sugar consumed. That's all A's and grades and employment. And you can categorize that by number of applications sent out and monster pings that you've gotten on the interweb. Lots of different ways you can conceptualize this beginning state and this end state. So if we go back then to the presentation, goal setting is critical to enhance motivation. Critical. And there are several things that we can do within a goal setting aspect that can really enhance the motivational processes. So let's look at this. Now, Locke and Latham have come up with these 4 aspects that good goal-directed behavior can initiate or generate in students. Information that good goal-directed behavior can generate or initiate in individuals. First of all, direct attention. The main word I would use for this is focused. We've talked about aspects of self-regulation in here. The self-regulation aspects of knowledge of self, knowledge of situation, knowledge of strategies, knowledge of subjects. But a goal helps you to focus. And many of you have heard that. Why don't you just focus on this? But oftentimes it's used in a negative way. Here, focus is used in something that can really hone in. And one of the things about directing attention is it clearly defines. Directing attention has a clearly defined goal or outcome. We'll see this here in a second. Specificity is vitally important for goals. I don't want to do better at fantasy football. I want to win. I want to score the most points, and how you specify that, directing attention. Number 2, energizing effort. Remember, let's go back to our definition of motivation. Energize, direct, and sustain. Hey.
Feedback
the video finally
is
worked.
a powerful way to achieve improvement in teaching and learning.
Hang on.
It is an integral part of every teacher's practice and, when used effectively,
Sorry,
can
too late.
improve student
Mr. James.
learning by...
Okay, energize effort. We'll look at this effort aspect here as we look at kind of some goal setting tips. Increase persistence. How long are you willing to stay with your goal versus how easy are you to give up? We've looked at aspects across the semester that can show inhibition of what? Conclusion, inhibition of choice. One of the aspects that people will sometimes point to here is known as delay of gratification. Kirby, I don't know how successfully you can get sugar, but can you deny yourself leftover Halloween candy? Or a Starbucks vanilla mocha frappuccino? Or those things that are laced with sugar enough to... I don't even want to know what's in some of the Starbucks drinks that my daughter and sometimes I drink. It's just insane with that. That increased persistence has everything to do with that. And then finally, when you look at these aspects of goal-directed behavior, it allows us to be inquisitive and innovative. Inquisitive and innovative. Finding new ways to reach a goal. If there's blocks, barriers, or impediments, you will find ways to meet or rise up to the occasion or challenge. If there's blocks, barriers, or impediments, you'll find new ways to meet or rise up to the occasion or challenge.
I'm in class.
For a lot of you, goal-directed behavior, grades this semester have looked very different. You are not taking tests in the normal format. You're not attending class in a way that's customary tradition. Your study methods, study habits, study motivations might have been thrown off by the fact that you're actually viewing everything in your bedroom, which is very easy to lose focus, distract, relax, listen to my voice. No, don't look at me. You might be fine. It's late in the afternoon right now. You might be getting tired. And so all of those environments. So you've had to adapt. That's what this talks about right here. And the more clearly defined a goal that you have, the easier it is for you to be able to do this. These are 4 critical things that goals do. Goals are imperative to maximize motivation. So when we look at that, then we can look at aspects of SMART goals. And we do have time for this video. I want you to know this acronym, SMART. Get ready to write down each one of these as they appear, because they have specific relevance to goal setting behavior. I'll let you get SMART, and then we'll play the video. It's unavailable. Wait, hold on. I can find it.
Tell her to check friends.
No, we don't have to. I can go over it. There they are, right there. Look at the cute little critters on this. Goal setting theory. These are things that researchers have demonstrated that are effective. Not someone's cute acronym that has animals hanging off of each one of the serifs on a letter. Things that when people put into practice, their relations, their goals, their outcomes are more likely to succeed. Number one, specific or specificity. Elaborate.
The Zoom room can't see anything.
Oh, I stopped it. Sorry. Okay. Go back here. There it is. There we go. All right. Specific. Elaborate goals with clear standards. Specificity is imperative. No one here talked about the impact, and a lot of things that people have said with regards to COVID is the fact that lack of physical activity, not being outside, quarantining has caused gain in weight. That gain in weight is something, you've heard of the freshman 15 when people go to college for the first time, diet and eating habits, and it's typical to gain weight. So people have pointed to COVID-19 as being a gaining of almost 20 pounds for some individuals. They just aren't used to routines and those type things. Eating habits have gone off the roof. So, specific. I want to lose weight. Now that's, I guess, a clear definition. But when you look at specificity, clear goals or elaborate goals with clear standards, a better stated goal would be, I would like to lose 2 pounds a week. It's something that has, when you get to this next aspect, the ability to be measured, to be quantified. If your goal is vague and it doesn't have any indication of your progress, goal setting theory are any steps and sequences we take to get from our beginning state to our ideal state. And the entire goal of this, of goal setting theory, is to do what? Reduce the gap. To borrow a British underground phrase, mind the gap. And a goal-directed action or a goal-directed behavior is anything that we engage in that will move us closer to reaching our ideal state. So therefore, when we look at specificity, what exactly do we want to accomplish? I want to be healthier. From a standpoint of human functioning, great. From a goal-setting standpoint, vague. Doesn't specify, but I want to lose weight, it's better. I'd like to lose 2 pounds a week, even better. What does that last aspect add in? It adds in measurability. It can be weighed. You can look at a scale. You know your progress rather than having to guess or estimate. Sugar consumption, GPR, you can look at where you stand in the class. I'd like to finish with perfect assignments on, well, again, we can look at that here in a second. Now, attainable. I'd like to finish with perfect scores on every one of my assignments this semester. Gang, it's probably not going to happen. Now, I'm not selling you short. You can do it. Kind of Waterboy, Bobby Boucher type aspect. I mean, certainly, go for it. The reality is when you have to look at something, you need to set something that is attainable. We're going to look at this on Monday of next week. Oftentimes, what people do is set 2 types of goals. They set something that's known as self-promoting goals that are very easy to obtain. And that makes someone feel good when they've accomplished it. If I said, I'm going to crush my 7-year-old at a game of basketball, likelihood of me winning is pretty high. Okay, it's attainable. But is it really something that's going to maximize my motivation? Probably not. In fact, I'm going to probably feel really bad if I lose. And someday I know I'll lose. The reality is that one day, in fact, all of you probably have an example of when you actually beat your parent at something. Okay, you finally, that rite of passage type there. So attainable. It's got to be moderately challenging. Sometimes people do the opposite. Instead of self-promoting goals, they set something known as self-defeating goals. Something that's not realistic for them to be able to achieve. It's beyond their ability. And so therefore, when they fail, or if they fail, they can always, I was never going to achieve that anyway. And so the attainability falls within that magic middle. Something that's got to be a bit of a challenge for you to accomplish, but it can't be too hard to where it's unattainable. You've got to find that magic middle for that motivation to really be maximized. Relevancy is key. If I want to be healthy and I want to lose weight, you have to look at the actions taken, the steps taken to achieve that goal. You can chart running, you can chart exercise, you can chart nutrition, you can chart all these different things, relevant steps. Reading a book, not relevant. So engaging in activities that have relevancy to the task at hand are essential in defining that goal-directed behavior. And then, finally, time-specific, time-bound, timely. That's when I ask you guys to look at short-term goals within 6 weeks versus long-term goals. And notice I didn't have you go longer than 6 months. That 6 weeks to 6 month rule is really kind of when you look at the maximized aspect goal set. For students who are freshmen in class this semester, the goal of I want to get an Aggie ring is way too off in the future. And so when you look at goal-directed behavior and keeping you focused in on that task, if an Aggie ring is so far away and someone says, hey, I know you have a test tomorrow, let's come out tonight. Such and such is playing at the Hurricane, or at the Texas Hall of Fame. Actually, Texas Hall of Fame is not open anymore. Hurricane Harry's. You're going to go. Because you're like, yeah, well, I can pass this course next semester. It's too far off. 6 weeks to 6 months. So your goal of getting an A in the next test, that's time bound. That's 10 days from now. Sugar and those type of things, you can look at actions that have an immediate impact on your beginning state, your ideal state, and your end state. And you can see how every action adds to that. Something that is too far away has loss of motivation potential because it's just not specific in the moment. That's what it is from a goal setting standpoint, 6 weeks to 6 months. If you're looking at those goals. Now, I think short-term goals that are less than 6 weeks with regards to specific indices of success are also very, very effective as well. Oftentimes when people research this, though, they look at these little micro goals, those things that are very short in nature, that have aspects that endure a little bit longer. I'll look at Tom. All right, so Tom's a ninth grader. Got a C for his reading test. He came to you, asked for help. How can we help him? Any activities for Tom? If Tom wants to do better on his next, look at his face. I mean, first of all, he's cute. He's a ginger. He's got tears. So how would you help Tom? Any suggestions with regards to goal setting that you can apply? Because I guarantee you, you're going to have not necessarily a Tom type question. You could have a baby Stewie question. You could have something with regards to goal setting. What would you say that would fit within one of these categories here, SMART? What is something you would give for Tom to give him feedback how to be successful in his next assignment? Okay, so blocks of time, and maybe incentivize that. So is that what you said? I couldn't hear it. Okay, so incentivize study time to where he's reading comprehension, passage, vocabulary, any of those aspects. I'm not sure how what's being assessed, but all those would be. So you set up a schedule, a block of time. All right, I like McKenzie's suggestion. Zoom room, any ideas? He's raising his hands for help. Both of them are in the air. Help. He's crying too. Can you look away? I can cue the Sarah McLachlan commercial music. After school tutoring. There's one. What would that do? Which one would that pertain to? So, what? Okay. So after school tutoring. Zoom room. Any ideas?
I put it in the chat, but
I can't see it.
It says start by building his confidence by reading easier books and build to more difficult levels.
All right, so build to more difficult levels. Again, actions relevant to goals, after school tutoring, intentional instruction, those aspects there. So, pretty much one of the last things we're going to be talking about today. We've got 3 more slides to get through. Goal orientations. How Tom approaches that task. Why do we put Tom's example in there? Why do we use him as kind of an exemplar here? How we approach a task, how we develop goals, has everything to do with the orientation that we are most likely to adopt. So we can categorize individuals as having one of several different goal type states or goal type sets. One of the first things that we can categorize individuals as having mastery goals. One thing that can describe a mastery goal individual is that they are task oriented or task involved. Task oriented or task involved. Meaning that the goal is being engaged in for intrinsic purposes. The goal is being engaged in for intrinsic purposes. There's critical distinction with this, though. When we look at people who adopt a mastery goal, their primary concern is doing better, becoming more skilled, personal competence. Why is that important? Because here's something that's going to drive and lead to our next lecture. People with a mastery goal orientation are not deterred by setbacks. Their motivation does not cease when they don't accomplish something well the first or initial time. In fact, they view failure as a function of learning. They view failure as a function of learning. If they are primarily concerned with building up their skills and ability at something, they realize that they might not be the best. There could be some setbacks, but it does not deter them. Actually, it encourages them. Persistence even in the face of failure. Now, the types of feedback that you give them, of course, are going to influence how long they're going to be willing to persist, but they're hoping to get better. There's an adage that goes along with this. Maybe you've been told this by your piano teacher. Practice makes what? Perfect. Practice makes perfect. Well, not practice makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Forget it. But practice makes perfect. But there will be mistakes. You're going to have some things you're going to have to learn and adopt to as you go by. You're not going to be the best at it at the beginning. But being the best has nothing to do with this mastery goal and orientation. All you're concerned with is mastering whatever it is, that skill at hand. Your domain of reference is who? You. The domain of reference is you and you alone. You want to increase your own personal skills, abilities, and competence. This is completely different than people who have a performance goal. Performance goals are evaluation of your skills compared to other people. These are people who like to show what they know. And so therefore, they're not task involved. We label them ego involved or ego oriented. Yes, they have a high degree of competence. They have that primary kind of need, but they also have aspects of what? Relatedness, that affiliation, and then power. Competition. Individuals is not necessarily doing well, it's doing better than somebody else. Not necessarily not necessarily doing well at something, but doing better than somebody else. Want to be recognized, rewarded with a trophy, a ribbon. In fact, now the criticism of sports is that we give everyone something, participation, medals and ribbons and that type of thing. It de-emphasizes the winning aspect. but their evaluation of their performance is others. How do these people view failure? What do you think? It's what? It's catastrophic. It's one of the things that will stop them dead in their tracks. Whereas mastery-oriented people who want to get better at something view failure as a function of learning, performance-oriented individuals view failure as the worst possible thing that could happen. Because compared to a set of standards or in others' eyes, you are deemed to not be successful. This is critical to get this today, because when we get to attribution theory on Monday, it's a whole new world. Failure and all those aspects of controllability. So it's key to get this distinction now. Mastery-oriented individuals are intrinsically motivated. Performance are extrinsically motivated. Then we have people that you don't want to work on group projects with. Work avoidant. These people are motivated to do the least amount possible to get by. The least amount possible to get by. Maybe you figured out you only have to go to a course X number of times a semester to get the grade. I don't need to know that, blah, blah, blah. You figure that out, and what do? You feel, you tell stories. I only went to that class 8 times this last year, 7 times this last year. It's not compared with how you did, it's how little effort you did to get there. You feel successful and motivated when you figure out the least amount of effort necessary to get by. Not interested in promotions or raises. You just want to do the bare minimum. Minimum wage, minimum effort. You are motivated to find out and figure. In fact, you spend more time worrying about how you do less effort. That, again, you know people I'm describing, right? Maybe you're one of them as you approach certain things. But certainly it's an aspect that has a goal orientation. And then finally, those people who are motivated by aspects of relatedness primarily respond to this social goal. Social goals tie into the aspect, that need-based aspect of affiliation. You are motivated when you're a part of a group. You are motivated in being part of a group, to feeling connected, accepted. Hey, you want to play a game? Sure, I'll play a game. What are we playing? It doesn't matter. I'll play anything I want to. You run out in your team. Yes, what are you playing? Great, go. They don't care about where you're standing and all. Then you have the uber competitive people who really get upset. Why don't you do that? I'm just here to have fun. The I'm just here to have fun type people go into these social goals. The highly competitive people do not like the people who are just here to have fun because they're not putting effort. They don't care about performance or results or standings or anything else like that. They're not there to work on their skills. They're there to hang out. That's the social goal. And it really drives people for certain activities. Again, we carry these into certainly some of you will identify with this social goal in certain aspects more than others. Those are the 4 goal orientations. Last aspect we're talking about today, interests. Trait type interests versus state type interests. Now, we've looked at interests yesterday or Monday when we talked about those things that can increase intrinsic motivation. We defined interest as being what? A state of curiosity or engagement in something. And we have 2 distinctions. I said, hey, I'm going to tease this today. You're going to hear these terms when we talk about them in class on Wednesday. The 2 main types of interests are those that are trait type versus state type. Now, you can look at the aspects of trait-type interests. High, personal, individual, enduring. You're about to kick me out of the state of Texas. I do not like pecan pie. Right. I also do not like pumpkin pie. My mom refused to buy a cheesecake for Thanksgiving, so I have to suffer with no dessert for Thanksgiving for the last 45 years. And it's a really sad story. I don't like either one of those pies. Now, my likes are trait type. Aspects individual to me. They are cultivated over a period of time. They're enduring. In this class, I disparage cats. Some of you love the feline animal. And so when I speak bad against cats, you're like, Dr. J really just makes me mad right there. He doesn't understand the cat. And so what I'm doing is I'm going against your trait type interests. These are enduring interests that we've built up over time that represent specific hobbies, activities, things that will really motivate and engage us. The problem is in a classroom like this, in which some people are attending virtually and some people are attending in person, how do you find alignment with interests that everyone can agree on? Okay, there's not. In essence, if I want to teach to people's interest and I want to get them motivated about the content, I can't give examples that are going to really motivate every single person. Why? Because all of you have different traits that you carry into with your interests and motivations. Now, the best example I can probably give is maybe talking about A&M. We all have an affiliation to this institution, and maybe this might be a personal, individual, and enduring type motivation that might make you respond to something in a more positive way. But what trait type interests do is they direct our motivations to things that we actually enjoy. You can think about that in your degree plans. All of you right now have got your scheduled plan for next semester, right? You've gone into Howdy, you've looked at the course sequencing, and you already know I'm going to hate that class. You have to have it. It fulfills this requirement. You have zero interest in it, but the state of Texas says you have to have it for core curriculum standard. You know it's good. Every morning when you get up, you're going to dread going to that class. Why? Because of state type interest. Now, maybe you might be pleasant. Maybe this was your class that hopefully I have expectations for this semester. Now, what can into a motivational environment or learning context, trait type interests. But what can then be our state type interests? These are temporary, they're situational, they reflect the learning atmosphere. If we dim the lights, we talk about music and all those different type things, how can I get you motivated right now? Aside from clapping. That's what state type interests are. Again, I'm going to use Aggie football. We're not playing this week. We are on a battle with the COVID team this week, but we return to action next week versus Ole Miss. Now, how many of you guys are going to be there? 2:30 on CBS. And again, you get all the. Can you imagine what Kyle Field will be like, and Kanye and the power? That's a state type interest. It's contextual. It gets everybody motivated, aligned. It creates a motivational atmosphere. It's not enduring. It doesn't last for a long period of time. But it refers to the general learning atmosphere that can be cultivated. And despite everyone's individual interests, you have motivational effectiveness. That's what state type interests can do. That's what you can try to cultivate in a classroom to really get people, even if it's the most boring content, you can present it in a way that will keep people engaged and motivated to persist and direct and sustain their behavior. And that's it. Needs, wants, goals, and interests. Do not miss Monday. Monday. First of all, it's the last lecture of the semester. There might be a surprise. I don't know. It's an incentive. We'll see. But beyond that, it is probably the theory that people have the hardest time wrapping their heads around. Attributional theory. We'll explain it. We'll unpack it. We'll talk about it in class. It's imperative. Now, to recap, if you joined our lecture late, 3 important things. Number 1, later